This is a continuation of part 1 of my interview with David Morgan. You spent some time in the video on a discussion between Ron Paul and Fed Chairman Bernanke on a proposed system where we use paper money and we also use gold and silver as currency.
Exactly, and as I explained in this video, Utah has already enacted that law that you can use both gold and silver on a monetary basis within Utah on a voluntary basis. So it exists now in the 50 states. In fact, that's what the law was originally, and that's the intent originally in the Constitution. So it's basically coming back around, and I thought it was very interesting. I was inspired to make my video based on the video you're referring to, which is produced by a gentleman that goes by Brother John F., and his website is noted in my video, and I'm sure it'll probably get him some more recognition, some more hits, which he definitely deserves. So it's a question always that, how is the system going to be rectified? And really one of the easiest ways to rectify the system is to do what Utah's done and go back to the states and let the states' rights work the way they were intended and let the state citizens go ahead and use honest money on a voluntary basis. So then you are circulating alongside the current, privately held banking consortium known as the Federal Reserve with their script, which is basically the only modality used. You have another one available that people can elect to use or not use. And there are other states. There's like 12 other states that have legislation that's similar to the one that's been passed in Utah that have not been passed yet. But I use the word yet cautiously because I think now that it's been enacted in Utah, I think it's only a matter of time where you'll see more and more states that will pass, this type of law. And then, of course, the implementation is the difficult part, but nonetheless, it can be achieved.
Well, how do you regulate gold and silver bullion and tax it? Or will that be figured out down the road?
Well, that's a really big question. It depends on what's going on at the state level. And even the Utah bill that was passed has that kind of as an open question. So that's a tough one. Dr. Paul points out, very briefly, if you catch it, that, to really be money, it's got to be a very low transaction cost, if none. In other words, there isn't really any markup. And so since silver and gold are considered to be an investment rather than money per se, it does bring into that question. And how that's achieved, I'm not going to speak on it at this time because really it's a TBD, to be determined situation. And it could depend on the state and how they enact their legislation. But it does pose a problem, there's no doubt.
What's the purpose of collecting silver, really? I mean, I do it. A lot of people do it. Is it a hedge against inflation? Are you hedging against possible anarchy down the road, or are you looking to trade with it?
Well, all of the above. Basically, it's a hedge against chaos or the uncertain financial system. Certainly, I've never advocated, all in 100% gold and silver. I mean, some people do. I think that a reasonable hedge at this point in time under the conditions we now have is about 20%. But that's what I think. It doesn't mean you have to agree with me. Having said that, I mean, if the system continues on and, finds a bottom and resurrects and comes back as stronger than ever or strengthens noticeably, then, you can send it back to a coin dealer or trade it through Craigslist or eBay or make a market yourself. I mean, there's numerous ways you can sell it. And you can sell it back into the currency de jure. You can sell it for Federal Reserve notes in the U.S. or Canadian dollars in Canada or Aussie dollars in Australia or wherever you are. So to get out of it doesn't pose a big a problem. Then as far as trading it directly, that goes into the barter system. And, of course, there's different regulations depending on your jurisdiction and how that's handled. But certainly you can spend it, you can sell it back. There's a variety of things that you can do.
Well, I myself am collecting bullion as I can, as well as having a cash savings, in addition to selecting some junior mining stocks where I feel the risk is smaller than the rest of the companies in the market.
Well, I agree. I mean, there's, different ways to invest, and obviously, mining shares is one. I've advocated to start with the physical side first and then move into the mining shares. They are undervalued, as I keep saying on every show I've done over the last several months, and it's true. I mean, we just put out a good recommendation on a junior gold, and it's been out, a few months, and it's already doubled. And I don't know many people that are in my business that have put something out recently that's doubled. And, it just goes to show that we don't mess around here. We do our research and usually come up with some pretty good results. Doesn't mean everyone does that, of course, but, it's tough to be able to say that in this market, but I can with authority because we've done it. We just put one out that's a very similar situation. that I think has at least as much potential as the one I just mentioned, but time will tell.
You use the phrase "in this market," which I hear all the time, but the fact is, in this market is irrelevant if you've got a company that's going to double in just a few months.
Right. All I'm saying is when you're in a bull market, then that sea raises all ships. In other words, you don't have to be a genius to pick almost any gold or silver company when the tide is really rising rapidly and strongly. Whereas in a market that tide's, going out as a metaphor and things are sinking, to have one go against the tide is tougher to do. That's all I'm pointing out. And, I said we've accomplished it, and we have. But my perspective is that we're in a consolidation period. It's going to take longer than most people want it to, which means it's a great time to accumulate. Just be patient. That's my stance, and I'm sticking with it. But a lot of people that are new to the market or were in relatively recently, meaning, on the way up from the last time silver hit to, say, 33, 34, 35 and moved all the way to 48, I was cautious about these levels. I said, if you have to get in, but don't get in with everything. Save some dry powder, save some cash, be prepared. And, of course, when the market came down, a lot of people, I would say, didn't expect it. I certainly did. Some didn't, I guess. But the point is that it cost people some money, and it caused some heartache for people that leveraged at too high a price. And now we're moving toward a good year. We're looking at 2011. May 1st basically was the top, and we're coming through March now, and April is another month. So basically it's a year, and we're still well under that $48 peak. It was 48 and change, of course. So, but these things take time, these major bull markets, and the bull market usually shakes off as many people as it possibly can. But again, it's actually, in my view, an opportunity, not something to be discouraged about. Just accept the reality and invest accordingly.
Getting back to Dr. Ron Paul, it seems that he's the most adept on matters of the economy and finance. He has a full understanding of things that you talked about. Why is someone like that, who clearly has a vision for this country financially, completely unelectable? And I'm not endorsing him one way or the other. I'm just saying it seems like he's the right medicine for this economy, and yet it's not going to happen.
You're asking the wrong guy, because I really don't know. I really believe, as you're indicating, that, the one person in politics who actually stands up and tells the truth is Dr. Ron Paul. And the only way you solve any problem in life is to clearly define the problem. And all these other politicians ignore the problem. They pretend as if this medicine that they're giving the economy by printing more money and keeping interest rates at unbelievably low rates and a stimulus package left, right, and center, these QE2s and 3s and Operation Twist and Shout and everything else they've got going isn't working. And yet Dr. Paul's the only one who says, look, it's not working and we've got to do something. So I don't know if it's the fact that people don't get it, or that they don't want to get it, or that he's marginalized by the mainstream press, or some combination of all three. I really don't know. But I, again, stand on my ground here, and I'm very strong about that to correct a problem, you've got to define it properly. He has defined it properly, yet you don't see in the mainstream, at least I haven't, and I do read the mainstream. Of course, I read a lot of my information on the Internet as well, but the mainstream just ignores the plain truth that we are mathematically incapable of getting out of the debt situation we created in the United States, and on a global basis, we are mathematically in a situation you cannot get out of the global debt in other areas as well. The Eurozone as another example. The Warren Buffett mentality, well, we'll grow our way out of it, sounds wonderful, and there were days in the past where America was strong enough economically where we did grow ourselves out of some pretty tight fixes. But to grow our way out of this one, we'd have to compound our growth around 20%. That's impossible in an advanced economy like this, especially when the manufacturing base has been gutted to the level that it has in the U.S. Of course, there's manufacturing left here, and there's a great deal of farming left here. But these large entities that do manufacturing and farming here are to such a fine science at such a massive scale that they employ very few people relative to the product produced. So there's all kinds of problems. I'd love to see us grow our way out of it. I don't think it's possible. So you have to really step up to the plate and say, look, this debt cannot be paid, and here is how we're going to solve that problem. But again, that's not something that seems to be very popular. Well, of course it's not popular. People don't want to get their credit cards taken away from them. They're acting like a bunch of teenagers that have overspent the credit card and their parents take it away and say, no, sorry, you're done. That's basically what it boils down to. And again, no one really wants to hear that. And so they keep pretending as if they have a rich aunt somewhere that's going to pay it off for them and things are going to go on merrily down the road.
Well, let's go with the rich uncle idea. We're buying everything from the Chinese. They've subsidized our debt. Why don't they just annex us?
There's massive problems with China right now, too. One is they see what's coming, and so basically they've taken a lot of the dollars that they have obtained through the balance of trade inequity. In other words, they've sold us stuff, and they've received dollars for that stuff, and they've taken those dollars and they've put it into, the best place I think you can in today's economy, and that's in real assets. They've got all kinds of oil situations throughout the globe, particularly in Africa. They've got real assets in the ground and different types of minerals. They've basically cornered the rare earth element market. They have a great deal going on in the real asset structure. So they're not really as burdened with dollars as a lot of people propose, because a lot of those dollars have been recycled into real assets. On top of that, in one of my more recent lectures, I show the fall off in the amount of dollars being held and invested by the Chinese. It's a massive drop off. So they understand what's going on. They see the picture clearly. They certainly are, by their actions, they're not saying it really verbally, publicly anyhow, but you can watch what they're doing. They're not investing in dollars nearly as significantly as they were a few years ago. They don't want dollars, and they have already made deals with India and Russia where they can trade directly with those other trading partners, circumventing the dollar. So the handwriting's on the wall. The global situation is such that a lot of foreign entities, foreign to the United States, are getting situations set up already and in place where they can trade without having to go through the dollar. And that's part of the situation about the whole global oil deal. The whole global petrodollar system is, well, you've got to trade in U.S. dollars to buy oil. And anyone that's trying to get around that or do it in a different way heretofore had a bit of a price to pay. So lots of problems. China has been the solution. Whether it will be the solution in the future, I have my doubts. I still am bullish China as far as having the best growth rate over the long term, and they've certainly been bashed enough over the last couple of years. Their stock market's been heavily damaged, so I think they probably are bottoming in here, and it's probably not a bad time to get back into the Chinese economy as an investor. But nonetheless, even China, I don't think, can pull the globe out of this. There's just too many problems that are interconnected, and there's too much uncertainty in the system.
But yet they're investing in opportunities worldwide, especially in the mineral space.
Of course. I mean, basically what you want to do is you want to build up your asset. I mean, it's sort of similar to someone that sees the situation similar to the way I'm describing it and says, well, if there's a real disruption in the economy, what do I need? And the answer would be, well, I need food, water, and energy. So I'm going to store some food, I'm going to store some water, I'm going to store some gasoline. I mean, that's about as basic as it gets. But on a macro scale, that's what China's doing. I mean, they're storing energy, they're storing mineral wealth, and building dams. I mean, so they're basically saying for our population, for our well-being, for our strength as a nation state, what we need to do is turn these dollars into real things that are needed for a long time. And, having something in the ground that's there that can be mined later, it's a pretty good vault, a pretty good holding facility. So that's basically the way I see it.
More to come in part 3 of this interview.